I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've been
So
in
the
this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the President of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have. I've
And
just
yet
been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet? WTF? Who's in charge?
The President of the United States is in charge.
In the ceremony was Charge d'Affaires of the Chinese Embassy, Yang Han. He reminded guests of the bonds of cooperation and common development between the two nations.
That's called soft power. All right, he's back for round two.
Good-paying jobs. Prior to President Trump's reciprocal tariff action, an estimated 2/3 of the 600,000 products exported by American companies paid higher tariffs than foreign trading partners paid on similar exports to the U.S. Thailand charges a 50% tariff on U.S. beef. Japan charges a 700% tariff on U.S. rice. Australia effectively blocks the sale of U.S. beef while we imported $3 billion from them just last year alone. The European Union rejects our biotech crops through a torturous 6-year regulatory process. It's only
Biotech crops. Biotech crops? Do you mean GMO?
Since Inauguration Day, we have seen more than $5 trillion in commitments for new investments in the U.S., including after the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs. Since Liberation Day, nearly 70 different nations have come to the table asking to reset our trading relationship. This approach will generate more market access under better terms for American producers. And if
Yeah, but the means by which you tariffed all of them was on a faulty premise because you called a trade deficit a tariff. All a trade deficit really is just I buy more from you than you buy from me.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And so for you to always look at that as a negative, it's really just supposed to be an exchange of goods. The people in my country want what you produce. So therefore, I will exchange money for said goods. If it's just access to different markets that he's talking about, you do understand that when it comes down to especially food, different countries have different standards for what they will allow into their country and what they will allow their people to eat. Why? A lot of that stuff is bad for them. Ask RFK.
any nation chooses not to cooperate, these tariffs, they will generate significant revenues. Based on President Trump's tariff policies, so far, it seems conservative to expect the U.S. to collect hundreds of billions of dollars in additional tariff revenue each year. President Trump is continuing the successful strategy he used in his first term. Tariffs brought China to the negotiating table for the Phase 1 agreement, which has
Not this time. This is now a back and forth.
The stock market surged today after President Trump paused tariffs on dozens of trading partners. At the same time, the president is increasing the tariff against China to 125% immediately.
It comes after China announced a retaliatory tariff against the U.S. earlier today. The White House says more than 75 countries have reached out to negotiate about tariffs. There will now be a 90-day pause to allow for negotiations, but there will still be a 10% across-the-board tariff. Wall Street reacted quickly to this news. Stocks surged to one of their biggest gains since World War II. During an event at the White House today, President Trump commented on his decisions.
Okay, so before we get to Jameson, okay, it's only fair to let the first speech from the opposition just speak a little bit. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you, Ambassador Greer, for being with us today. There's a new political caucus, as you know, that has been formed in this town. It's called Republicans for Tariffs. This is the first time that we've heard them ever embrace tariffs. And I must point out that Liechtenstein doesn't stand a chance. From the economic soft landing that President Trump was handed, a low unemployment rate, 2.9% average growth GDP, and millions of jobs created during the previous 4 years, it's only taken him 79 days to inflict this permanent damage. Recession odds are getting higher by the day. We are following the largest tax and tariff hikes in decades. The average family will confront about $3,800 in new costs. Look at one's 401k, retirement savings, education plans, new home and auto sales. been wiped out. The layoffs continue, and the plant closings that the chairman referenced today are continuing as well. Trillions of dollars have been lost just in the last week.
I think I should preface this by saying that this was earlier in the day before the news actually came down that there was going to be a pause on the tariffs, which made the market, rebound.
The National Review and the Wall Street Journal, hardly left-wing publications, have both warned against the tariffs, and National Review saying today it's time for Congress to assert itself and end this trade war.
That I agree with.
Last night, the president said he's now coming for higher drug prices. Between the cuts they've planned to our programs at lower cost and the rising prices of these tariffs, their giveaways won't make a dent in the higher cost our colleagues have planned, apparently, for the American people. The Wall Street Journal editorial board said it best. This is the dumbest trade war in history. It's not only dumb, it's unconstitutional. It started with the Trump administration's unprecedented opposition and imposition of emergency tariffs on two of our closest allies. You and I, Mr. Ambassador, know something. We negotiated USMCA. It was a good deal. 195 Republicans voted for it. 196 Democrats voted for it. It was a real negotiation, coupled with the fact that it is to be reviewed next year. Instead, we're now imposing tariffs on two of our longtime friends and neighbors.
Friends no more.
Well, this is awkward.
I heard what Melanie Jolie said.
The trust was affected by what happened. This trade war was launched out of nowhere against your best ally, friend, and neighbor. And we want to make sure that we can be constructive, but we're not naive neither. We know we have to protect our own jobs and our own economy. And of course, meanwhile, we're talking to the world.
The president has given himself delegated powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. It's not a blank check for this president or any president to utilize without congressional assent. On April 2nd, he stretched it even further to self-delegate more emergency powers. Now he's defying economics and attempting to convince people that the trade deficit that we've had for the last 50 years is suddenly an unusual and extraordinary emergency. I've had the highest regard for USTRs. I've worked with all of them during my time on this committee. I know what they really think. But whether we or you think that this trade deficit is a concern or not, most serious economists say it is. It's clear that it does not meet the definition of an emergency statute. Republicans in Congress are missing in action, afraid to speak up, knowing that they've never embraced tariffs as an economic suggestion.
Admittedly, this has to be one of the weirdest hearings I've ever listened to, because only 1 hour of this whole hearing, the last little bit, you can see where the marker is at the 3 hour and 39-minute mark. And the reason for that is because as Jamison Greer was speaking, news came down that undid everything that was already spoken beforehand. So really, it's only from this point that you're taking into consideration the information that's now available to you. From this point, that actually counts.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and to the ranking member. Mr. Trade Representative, are you aware that the tariffs have been paused?
I am, yes.
When were you made aware of that?
Well, I understood the decision was made a few minutes ago. It's something
Sitting here,
under discussion.
sitting here, under discussion. So did you know that that this was under discussion, and why did you not include that as part of your opening remarks?
So typically what I don't do is divulge the contents of my discussions with
What are the
President
details of the
Congress.
pause?
Well, my understanding is that because so many countries have decided not to retaliate, we're going to have about 90 days.
No, excuse me? China increased their tariffs on the United States. Trump blinked.
What's the blink, sir?
What do you know about this pause? What are the details of it?
Well, the details, as I understand it, is that China continues to retaliate. Other countries didn't retaliate. The president 2 or 3 days ago said we wanted to negotiate with those countries that asked for meetings. That's what we're doing.
What are the
We've had
details?
discussion.
How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've
So
been in
the
this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have. I've
And
just
yet
been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet. WTF? Who's in charge?
The president of the United States is in charge.
And what do you know about those details?
Don't do that again.
Well, as I mentioned,
It looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you.
we've been discussing a
If
variety
you
of these
came
actions.
here knowing that you were going to be turned off,
Hold on. To be fair, they were discussing all the tariff stuff beforehand. So the same stuff that they were discussing yesterday, that's what they kind of been following up with. So now that the strategy's changed and there's now a 90-day delay, right here, you see Trump pauses higher tariffs for 90 days, but China trade war escalates. What I find kind of funny is that a few days ago, there were rumors that were floating around that they were going to pause the tariffs. What happened? This little window right here, the stock market actually spiked. And then when it was confirmed a little bit later that the rumors weren't true, it went right back down. So I'm just saying, the strategy works.
you know about those details.
Well, as I mentioned,
It looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you.
we've been discussing a
If
variety
you
of these
came
actions.
here knowing that you were going to be turned off, that these tariffs were going to be turned off, why didn't you include that in your opening statement? Why didn't you reference that as part of your testimony?
Fair question.
Well, I don't disclose my conversations with the president, sir.
These were specific questions we asked you all along. What's the strategy? These are real consequences for the American people and small businesses. I had a group of small businesses in my office earlier today talking about the impacts of these tariffs on aluminum and steel. This is amateur hour, and it needs to stop. What does this even mean for your negotiating strategy? How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
Okay, so the truth in question that he's referring to is that this was sent out just before 1:30, and it says, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Department of Commerce, Treasury, and USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period to 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Understand that this hearing was going on while this news came down.
Strategy. How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
The president was elected, and he runs the trade policy, and I advise him and execute his trade policy.
Who executes the trade policy?
I execute the trade
Did you
policy.
know that this was happening?
We have been discussing all kinds of
And there's another
options.
member of the cabinet, Bessent, who just canceled coming to the Hill to avoid talking about the market because it's in turmoil. This in just days because there was no strategy, there was no plan. The president chose to take actions that he didn't even have the authority to take. He's put our economy in disarray and near collapse. We have small businesses and Americans who are concerned about their well-being, people's retirement, people's 529 accounts went down because of this administration. We have people that are planning to send their kids to college this fall. People who are retiring whose benefits have declined. Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
And
That's offshored all of our factories.
And what has that done?
Offshored all of
How
our
have you
jobs.
done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people, which was our concern from the very beginning. Tariffs are a tool. It can be used in the appropriate way to protect U.S. jobs and small businesses. But that's not what this does.
No, they haven't enacted harm just yet. It's more just paranoia. Because the pattern goes, we're implementing tariffs. No, we're not. We're pausing tariffs. We're implementing tariffs. We're pausing tariffs. We're implementing tariffs. We're pausing tariffs. So the rumors a few days ago that said that they were going to pause the tariffs except for China, those were actually true.
So if it's not market manipulation, what is it? Who's benefiting? What billionaire just got richer? And all the while, there are not even any Republicans left in this hearing. They all left because they don't even want to defend this. But meanwhile, the Speaker is rushing to the floor to pass a budget reconciliation to screw America by passing the biggest tax cut in history on the backs of the American people? WTF? Who's in charge? Because it sure doesn't look like it's the trade representative.
I told you stop
just
saying
got
that.
the rug pulled out from under you. I wish I could feel some empathy, but the empathy I have is for the American people whose very well-being and livelihoods are being affected. This is not a game. This is real life.
Yeah, WTF.
I yield back.
Okay, one more, because this speaker also takes into consideration that the tariffs are now on pause. So there's no need to talk about it anymore. But now anyway.
Ms. Plaskett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Ambassador, good afternoon. I had quite a number of questions about tariffs, but since that's on pause, I'm going to pause on those questions and deal with one that is more specific to my district and one that I'm concerned with, and that's regarding a proposed rule that you have that has been put out, and I know that there have been testimony about it. In the U.S. Virgin Islands and throughout the Caribbean, as well as some of the other territories, in Hawaii, we import virtually everything needed for daily life, from food products, poultry, groceries, vehicles, etc. 97% of the food that's consumed in my district comes from imported goods. I'm deeply concerned about the impact of trade actions, particularly because it seems very apparent that I don't know if the American territories have been thoroughly thought through and the impact this will have on us in some of these tariffs as well as some of the proposed rules. Proposed action taken under the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, Section 301, authority, right now does not provide a balanced solution, particularly when it comes to American businesses and jobs in the shipbuilding capacity. We know that you've proposed a rule to provide, to impose fees on those ships which are not made, that are Chinese made, that are not American made. However, a large portion of ships which are much smaller than those that are made in American ports, the American ports are predominantly making those for the military purposes. It's cost effective for them to do it for the military, but not for those kinds of cargo shipping that's done in the Caribbean region.
In short, are you thinking about the little guy while you're implementing these decisions?
It doesn't provide a balance for us, and we are concerned not only in the Virgin Islands, but Puerto Rico, as well as the other Caribbean islands, that this imposition of $1 million per port that is being proposed will bear incredible impact on us. U.S. shipping industry serving the Caribbean cannot absorb additional costs of the proposed port fees, which would have a significant economic consequence to us. I have the median income, family income in the Virgin Islands is $30,000 a year. The cost of $1 million per port is going to be passed on to the consumers in my district, to the business owners. We are about to start a rebuilding of 20 schools, 2 hospitals, a complete microgrid, complete utility rebuilding both in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. All of the laying and supplies that are coming into us are coming from these type of vessels. If they are then going to be imposed this fee, we will, negotiations that have already been done with FEMA for the cost of rebuilding are going to skyrocket, and we need some support for that. The thought is, sir, is many of these shipbuilders are in fact American owned. They're American shipping vessels that are American-owned. They are just Chinese-made. Has there been discussion about having some exemption for American-owned, American vessels that are coming out of Florida, going into the Caribbean? I have a chart up here. 92 billion has come from the Caribbean into are imported from the United States. The Caribbean region, which only has 80 million people, is the fourth greatest trade partner with the United States. Have you thought about exemptions for those individuals who are in there?
Thank you for your thoughtful comments and feedback. We've also heard from other territories that have expressed similar concerns, and so we've had a process going on with hearings and collecting comments, and this is certainly something that we take on board. I think it's very important. We have two things we're trying to thread here, right? One is the Chinese make all the ships mostly, besides Japanese and Koreans, and we don't make any ships, and so we need to change the incentives there. But then we have the issue you're talking about is, we're not going to make 25 ships on April 18th, the day after we put in any kind of measure. So I certainly think that there has to be accommodation made for circumstances, because we're not going to have all the ships on April 18th. So this is helpful to me. No decision has been finalized yet.
I would also put this out. The other concern is one that has been mentioned by my colleagues as well, is national security. We cannot have Caribbean nations moving closer to China, who is already on the shores of these Caribbean nations, to try and do increased trade with them. If we are having a trade war with China, if we want to ensure that America is first, America needs to be first in its third border, which is the Caribbean. That was said by President George W. Bush. That is the third border. That is what we need to secure. And we're not going to do it if we are pushing American shipping companies outside of the Caribbean, and they have to go to China to do that. So
China has been playing the long game in the Caribbean for a long time now. They've been helping build roads, they've been mining, they open stores. They do everything to develop these areas where they're going to be able to implement trade, funnel their own products into those islands. They've been doing that for some time. Speak to anyone from the Caribbean. They will tell you that the Chinese footprint in the Caribbean is heavy. Very heavy.
The Embassy of the People's Republic of China of Trinidad and Tobago celebrated 50 years of diplomatic ties with the 4th China Trinidad and Tobago Friendship Day reception and awards ceremony.
China and Trinidad Friendship Day.
Opening the ceremony was Chargé d'Affaires of the Chinese Embassy, Yang Han. He reminded guests of the bonds of cooperation and common development between the two nations that cover technical assistance, grants, concessional financing, and infrastructure development.
That's called soft power.
Well, I want to thank you for your consideration of this.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to stop there because it's almost done, and more of it was just repeating itself. Of just they want to see goals and they want to see plans and they want to see things actually work out. They want manufacturing back, but they want to actually look strategic or be strategic. Those were the two I really thought counted. Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and I will see you again on the next one. Be easy, y'all.
On the backs of the American people? WTF? Who's in charge?